Are you quite ready, Lee? Are you finished?
It is recording, Matt. You are ready to go.
Have you farted enough? Have you got enough wind out? Because now we're actually going to be on YouTube. We don't want you guffing all over the feed.
Do you mean my tubes?
I mean, anyway. Jethro Tull got us 90 views. If you break wind, we might blow up the internet.
Break like the wind.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you light it and it'd be really pretty. Just turn off the lights and anyway.
Have you had your coffee yet, Mark?
Matt.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to start now.
I'm just checking.
You're listening to Oh, I'll do that again. Sorry, JR. You're listening to. Oh dear. You're listening. I'm going to start again.
Yeah, go on. Let's start again. After 3.
3, 2. You're listening to.
Do you want to try that again because you tutted a bit?
Yeah. Asshole. You're listening
to sorry, go on.
It's a good job I've moved away from Devon because I'd be around there with a machete.
Go on then.
You're listening.
Excuse me. Okay, all done now.
You know, some of us work in the working week, so if we haven't finished this by tomorrow morning. Okay, I'm going to start now. You're listening to TV Club Extra Light. And for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking about the Book of Boba Fett, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm Matt.
I am Lee.
I'm Simon.
Thank goodness we started. So JR's not here because he's in the Arctic killing seals. But he also hasn't seen the Book of Boba Fett, whereas Simon and Lee have seen the Book of Boba Fett, and I've seen the Book of Boba Fett, and the Book of Boba Fett is just finished, and so we've convened to talk about the Book of Boba Fett. Now it's just finished, so we've got a whole view and a whole review of the whole series.
Listen,
interestingly, there was more.
Can I just start by saying I actually don't like that title, and you repeating it over and over again really makes me just want to leave.
Okay, well, I
was going to say there was more Boba Fett in that intro than there was in the actual show, isn't it?
We shall get to this. So the Book of Boba Fett. Let's start. Let's do the JR traditional start. Lee, did you like it?
Is that how he starts? Lee, did you like it? Well, so if I say yes, then it's done. That's a 5-minute podcast.
I think you want it in a nutshell.
Oh, in a nutshell. Okay, it's a game of 2 halves, isn't it? First half was the Book of Boba Fett. Second half was the Mandalorian Part 3.
Mm-hmm. And Simon?
Yeah, I liked it, but I have a theory about it where the title is misleading. It is merely a chapter title as opposed to a TV series title, but we'll get to that.
And I liked bits of it, but I think it probably overestimated the average viewer's interest in the lives and rituals of the Tusken Raiders for a lot of people. And I think it also overestimated the average viewer's tolerance for sandy locations. So it was a game of 2 halves. So which halves what did you like about it? Which halves did you like about it, Lee?
I did like actually a couple of the episodes in the Boba Fett section, and the Mandalorian felt it was good half that Mandalorian. My favorite episode was with Luke Skywalker actually. Yeah, I know, which might be a little bit divisive for some people, but that was one of my favorites. And I also did like the first episode, which I thought was really good.
And I'm not sure it's going to be divisive.
Well, because of the whole fakiness of Luke's face.
Yeah, I did notice that was quite divisive on social media. There were some people who were literally, like myself, mouth agape, saying, "Oh my God, they've done it! It's really, really effective. It's subtle, and it was well thought out. It was a scene that was going to work in that way." And then there are those who think they know more about special effects than the people who actually do it. So that's the two parties.
Hang on, because we had a slight disagreement briefly, where I felt the Luke Skywalker bits you could still tell were CGI and was still a little bit dead-eyed. And and it's also a bit creepy because they haven't used, so it's not using Mark Hamill as a body double anymore. So it's using another actor as a body double, and they aren't using Mark Hamill's voice side. So they've got a synthetic voice, which is amazing. But is that good?
I've heard people say that it's all very laboured, and he speaks very slowly. And the thing is, if you listen to Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, particularly when he's battling his father at the end, he is like that because it's obvious, but he's kind of projecting the whole Jedi calm, isn't he? That's the whole point.
And that's
which is why I thought it worked.
Yeah, I thought it worked as well, and that is the whole reason. I mean, there was one image of him jumping around where they obviously forgot to put his mask on, and you could see the real actor for a split second. But honestly, I knew that was the case, and it didn't really matter. I was just really excited to see him as the character with a little tiny Groggo or Groggo, or whatever the frog's called.
Grogu.
Yeah, because essentially the trick is it allowing them to tell the story effectively, and I think it is. If you're not hovering around, did they do his face properly or not? It's.
I think, and we'll move on to your theory in a sec, Simon. But I think I'm interested in it because I think this is the future. This is an interesting future of sort of CGI characters from the past. It risks feeding this kind of nostalgia fetish for people constantly, like Ghostbusters, wanting old characters back, looking the same as they did. And I think normally I don't have a problem with bringing old things back and doing new things with them, but I think there's a risk that we'll just end up with Back to the Future Part 4 with Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd looking the same. But I'm still interested. I was still fascinated to watch it. I felt like it had a bit of dead eye. I liked the voice. I thought the voice was the most successful thing. I thought that the eyes still didn't quite do it for me. Actually, my problem was with the episode in general, that I wasn't sure how interesting watching Grogu jumping around was.
Well, actually, the scene in Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back rather, where he's with Yoda, that was always my least favourite part of the film.
Me
as
too.
well. But I think there was something a lot different about this. It's much more spangly new. That he's building his teaching academy or whatever. All of that was quite exciting because we know what happens in The Last Jedi and what happens afterwards. So that suddenly became something else. It was like, I know where this is going. And actually, going back and watching those scenes with Yoda are much more enjoyable now. But at the time, I just thought, not really that interested.
I'm still not on board yet. So the series in general, it's an odd one because it looks like it's going to be about Boba Fett because it's the book of Boba Fett. It spends some time with Boba Fett. It looks at his backstory. It follows his rise or his consolidation of power. And then it kind of goes off into space and becomes a kind of Mandalorian season 2B or 3A, and follows the Mandalorian for an episode, and then follows Grogu and the Mandalorian for an episode, and then it kind of gets back with them all gathered together at the end. Did that work, or was that weird?
I don't know about you, Simon, but I thought that they should have introduced the possibility of the Mando coming back quite early on, and then that way you're used to the fact that he is coming back. It's almost like they got halfway through the series. I think I heard somebody else say this, and I agree. That got halfway through the series, got bored, and thought this isn't really working. Let's bring the Mando back. I'm sure that isn't the case, But by bringing Mando in a little bit earlier, maybe perhaps that would have given the balance to the series a little bit more balance to the Force.
And now it's time for Simon's theory.
I just think it behaves as a tendril shooting off from the Mandalorian's timeline. So in that respect, it was always going to involve the Mandalorian because it's just this little story offshoot, this plot offshoot that we saw a little window of in the Mandalorian. We thought, what's Boba going to go and do next? And we get to see what he does next, and then the Mandalorian manages to come back, and they do a favor for each other. So in that respect, I thought it worked because essentially, I don't think there's one person who's going to watch unless there's somebody who's really got an issue with the Mandalorian because it's not Boba Fett. There's no one who's just going to watch the Boba Fett series without seeing the Mandalorian first. So it's just another way of, it's almost like a canine company, in as much as it's an offshoot of the main thing without being the main thing, if you see what I mean. But I mean, yeah,
the balance work though.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I did feel it was a little laboured, and it felt a little slow. And I thought, what are we actually, is it entertaining enough for those early episodes? Was there enough going on? And it was kind of Boba Fett bouncing around inside an empty Jabba the Hutt's palace, apart from a couple of pig guards and the nice white robot voiced by Matt Berry. So I didn't feel like there was a lot going on, and it did seem to come alive when the Mandalorian got involved.
I think
that was a gorgeous. Was that the Bryce Dallas Howard episode? Was that the one where we first saw the Mandalorian? And there's the gorgeous bit. Did you notice when he got in the lift and you saw him go up the floor and the camera? It was one long shot of him walking and then getting in the lift, going up to another level and getting out again. Yeah. And you just knew, they're doing all that amazing, projection stuff that they can do now. They're really experimenting and pushing the envelope, which was great. In that respect, I don't think it worked, because I think the Mandalorian bit seemed denser and seemed to have more meat on the bones than the other bits. So I think that's where I don't think the format didn't work, but I do think the execution didn't work in as much as one offset the other.
But there's also
if that makes sense.
There's also a thing about energy and actors, isn't there? We talk about Doctor Who a lot, so when you have somebody like Peter Capaldi or David Tennant or Matt Smith, they're all full of energy. So therefore, the episodes come alive. And even if the episodes are slightly weak, you've always got a very strong character somewhere in them. With Boba Fett, there wasn't really. His I can never remember her name in the series. His sidekick, yeah. She's great. She's been in lots of stuff that I like, and I just felt like she was sitting down too much, quite a lot, next to him, and he was just talking like this all the time, really slowly and almost reading it off a card in the corner. He's not the greatest actor in the world, and there's probably a reason why Boba Fett didn't come back so early in anything. I'm just saying, but maybe the whole reason this happened, and the whole reason they had to have Boba Fett in, because they couldn't think of anything else to put in the Tatooine Western trilogy, which is what this is going to be, isn't it, with Ben Kenobi coming up. So what are the other characters you're going to choose?
So
the Rancor.
So I really liked when they reintroduced. I think I disagree with Lee that I think doing a sort of a surprise reintroduction of the Mandalorian worked really well. I liked the first episode, and I liked the idea that it was doing the Godfather. It wasn't doing a Western to start with. It was doing the Godfather, and it was doing his rise to power, and it was like Godfather Part 2 with his escaping from the whatever it's Sarlacc beast or whatever it's called. And I liked that to an extent. I think they did that over too many episodes, because I think particularly the second episode, just the Tusken Raiders stuff. I never thought that the Tusken Raiders anybody wanted to find out more about how they made their sticks, and how they got their water and what they did. And that's when. But it just bogged it down. No,
I love that. I love that's the thing with Star Wars, that universe, is what I've always been interested in, what each of those creatures' backgrounds are like. And when you sit down and somebody spends the time doing it and really working out their culture, I find that fascinating. The Tusken Raiders can easily be dismissed as but the more you look at it and the more you see their culture, it's a little bit flaky in places, but it's actually quite good. You don't get that quite as deep with, say, the Jawas, even though we see them a little bit more in the Mando being a little bit cheeky in that, but you don't get to see them kind of making love on a sweet evening. But with the Tusken Raiders, at least you can almost envisage or imagine that their families are real and they've come from somewhere, and they've got this tradition and civilization.
But I think the good thing for me about Star Wars was the way it suggested these civilizations without having to show them. So
if you're going to suggest it,
you just touch on it, and then your imagination runs riot. Actually, seeing it for a 60-minute episode isn't actually that great drama. That's basically anthropology rather than drama.
We saw it in the prequels as well, didn't we? We saw Anakin go and slaughter a whole lot of Tusken Raiders, so we saw more of them anyway in the films, which we probably wouldn't have done any other time. You don't see more walrus men, you don't see more actually we did get an extra hammerhead person, but anyway, but you don't see their civilization. So they've taken the Tusken Raiders, turned them into a kind of like almost like Bedouin, aren't they? They're kind of desert dwellers. So they've taken that. Oh wow.
Well, what's
the matter with you?
Not what you're saying. I just think. Okay, so
it's a Lawrence of Arabia moment. It's kind of like ingratiating yourself into a new culture. You've been rescued. It's of course it's been done a million times before, but I thought it was just interesting and different. He didn't need to talk either, which is really useful because he's not really good at it.
It kind of ties into my issue with the first 4 episodes of just Tatooine, and actually it puts me off the Obi-Wan film as well. For me, Tatooine in the original Star Wars films, Tatooine was always the place that people were trying to escape from. Luke was trying to get off Tatooine and explore the stars as quickly as possible. They were trying to escape with Han Solo and Return of the Jedi, get off Tatooine as quickly as possible and go to the more interesting places. And here we just this is why I was quite excited to see the Mandalorian walking around the big Dyson Sphere space station thing, because at least we were off effing Tatooine and getting away from the sand people. And I think the Tusken Raiders for me are the epitome of sand people. But then when they did go back, I think it picked up a bit because I really liked the Lee Van Cleef gunman.
Yeah.
thing. And I liked the mod people, which were the sort of Sylvester McCoy type era sort of, but at least they had colour, at least they had they were adding some sort of youth to it. I wasn't particularly enamored with what they did with them and the performances, but the idea of kind of the youth of Mos Eisley or wherever kind of modifying their bodies and becoming this kind of rebel group, I kind of like that idea.
Should we go there in a minute with Simon? Simon, I want to hear what you think about the Tusken Raider stuff.
Oh yes.
The thing is, the living ghost of George Lucas is hovering over all of this, because this idea that Boba Fett isn't the character that everyone is expecting him to be. We're back to the Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker territory, where the fans are saying, but that's not who Boba Fett's supposed to be. And it's like, well, how do you know what Boba Fett's supposed to be? You go back, obviously you go back to Attack of the Clones, and that's a swear word in some people's circles, but we saw Boba Fett as a child, and we saw where he's come from, and why he's a bitter and twisted little individual. And we're seeing him kind of finding some sort of, I suppose, some kind of peace and some kind of family that he's always been looking for. So on a character level, a lot of it makes sense. As far as the Tusken Raiders, same again. Is it Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin slaughters a load of them?
It has to be Revenge of the Sith.
Must be Revenge of the Sith, yeah.
Revenge of the Sith, yeah. So again, we saw the tents and everything like that. So this is just building on what George Lucas has been doing anyway. So this is naturally carrying all of that on. So there's some consistency there. I didn't mind it. I think it went on a bit too long, because it felt like there was at least 3 or 4 episodes where he was in a Bacta tank and nothing was actually happening in present time. It was all flashback. And I think maybe they could have pushed it a little bit more, where you do get this, jumping back and forth timeline, because it wasn't really doing that a lot. It was just kind of popping back to say, oh, he's still in the Bacta tank. Here's a bit more of what he went through. Oh, he's back in the Bacta. Oh no, he's had a walk around Mos Eisley or Mos Espa, and he's back in the Bacta tank. So in that respect, it felt a little bit laboured, I think.
I think in terms of it's about him consolidating power, but they don't really see him do that much of the consolidating of the power, and they don't really tie what's happening in his past to how he is now, apart from the fact he's a bit ill. So I think the Tusken Raiders bits, they weren't about Boba Fett. Boba Fett survived them, but he didn't seem to get that much from them. It was more about just looking at the Tusken Raiders and their culture.
Yeah, but the culture was not insidious, that's the wrong term, but it you know, he took it inside. He took it inside himself.
Yeah.
It becalmed him in a way that you know, Luke Skywalker becomes a calm Jedi. It changed who he was as a person, you know, as a character, and he was no longer a bounty hunter. He's no longer hunting around, but doing what he used to do. He didn't know what he necessarily wanted to do, but when he decided to take over Mos Espa and try and make it a better place, then he found his calling, his redemption, which is very Western, isn't it?
And I have to say, I agree with Matt that I liked the scooter gang. But it was unfortunate that first episode they appeared. They were more like they were on mopeds as opposed to scooters, because something was wrong with that chase scene where it seemed to be happening at 20 miles an hour instead of 60. So there was something going on with the pacing, I think. But that was my impression anyway. I may rewatch it, but I did see somebody on Twitter saying that's probably the weakest bit of Star Wars that we've seen in a long time. And I think that's right. I think it was quite a weak episode. And then I saw Robert Rodriguez's name on the directorship. But then you compare that to the last episode, and you think, well, no, it was just that particular section, I think, because there was nothing wrong with that last episode, was there?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we have been brought up with the dirty Star Wars universe. Everything's really greasy and dirty, and the whole of Tatooine's covered in sand and dust and rust and whatever. So we've never really seen anything clean apart from the odd droid. And when you see the odd droid that's clean, they're almost like they come fresh from the Death Star and the Jawas have nicked them or whatever, you know. So you don't get to see that. And I think that was they knew what they were doing by plopping those 5 paradigm Daleks. Sorry, I mean mods in there, and they're really, really colourful. And part of me was going, like a Doctor Who fan, you always go, well, I tell you what, those have come off world. That's why they're so shiny. Then they've not been made on Tatooine. There's no way. There's no way they could have done that there. So you kind of make an excuse for it, but it just felt a bit silly.
It's like it's one bit I really liked was when they went to see the mayor. The mayor of Mos Espa, and they go into this room, and it's basically an office building with a reception desk. Yeah. And I really liked that. I thought that was so funny to have this, as you say, this traditional Star Wars beaten up world, and then you go in and it's basically like IKEA in there with a kind of a slightly officious, useless receptionist.
That worked though. So, that really worked.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So I like the bits of humor in this.
Yeah.
And then the Mandalorian's introduced, and then it feels like it shifted from The Godfather to the Magnificent. So you mentioned westerns. Counts. I think obviously it turns into a western because of Lee Van Cleef, gunman person, but it's got that sort of Magnificent Seven where and this was what I was expecting. They were going to go off and start gathering a team of kind of gunslingers and badasses, starting with the Mandalorian. And then I was expecting the next episode to be somebody else from the Star Wars universe that they collect, maybe get a Jedi in or something like that. But actually it did something different, which I think was why I was disconcerted by the Luke Skywalker episode, because that was the one. Yes, it was interesting, and it was interesting if you really want to find out what Luke Skywalker does between Return of the Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. But it's that really is treading water, isn't it? In terms of the story of Boba Fett.
No, it's not.
Gathering the troops. No,
because Grogu is one of the troops. He is the Jedi that comes along and helps out, and he has to make it. You know, that's as much a story. That's a story about him. It's not about Luke being there. It's about him and his choice. And you know, the Mando turns up and he leaves him the armor. The kid's got to make a choice. I have to say that I really genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. I thought he'd come back, but I didn't know he'd be wearing the armor. So he made a choice, and that's a really interesting and kind of brilliant twist in it that I thought worked. And you wouldn't have got that moment where he walks out when he's flying the X-Wing, and you know, you look at him, he's in there flying the X-Wing, you think they're so cute and it's so funny, and I just think, yes, he's come back. So it actually made me feel like, yes, that character's made a decision, and that I believe that character made that decision. So I think that episode was quite important.
Yeah, I think after the last episode, I think think it recontextualized that episode. I think too much. I think Grogu has a potential of irritating me, and I kind of if I ever saw an entire series just with Baby Yoda in it, I'd kind of want to see him liquidized. Simon?
Well, like Gremlins.
Yeah.
I heard this question asked, and it's this theory that is Grogu the Mandalorian as opposed to, I can't remember his name. This is rubbish, isn't it? This is the thing about having a 50-year-old brain rather than 10 years old. You remember every single name of every single alien, but you can't remember it for the main characters in the new series.
YouTube helps. Oh no, it doesn't really. Din Djarin.
Yeah, there we go.
Djarin.
So I find it interesting. I find it interesting, though. You know, are they a close knit team then for series 3 as 3 of the Mandalorian? I'm assuming there will be no more book of Boba Fett now. I'm assuming that's run its course now.
That's more like a Ladybird book of Boba Fett, really, wasn't it? It wasn't really a book. When you say book, it's kind of like biblical, isn't it? Because the whole thing does feel like, it's supposed to be biblical. It's Western. It's got all that, I don't know. It promised more than it delivered, really. But I think I'll probably go back and rewatch it, even though right now I don't want to. But I think I will do, and it might get a different effect in the second time round. But I do think the actor needs, it's all about the energy sometimes of who you've got in there. Actually, the Lee Van Cleef alien, just out of interest, do you know if it was actually based on Lee Van Cleef? Because that's the first thing I thought when I saw him.
It had his face, pretty much.
Yeah, did you not know him from the Clone Wars? He's years old as a character.
Oh, okay. Oh, we've been
again. I can't remember his name, and I should do. And
did he always?
Oh my God,
that?
yes.
Yeah,
I do remember.
He looked identical to how he is in the animation. So he's another one who's been brought back. So there was another punch the air moment for thousands of fans.
Oh, he was in an animation.
Yeah, I should have punched the air because I've seen that.
Okay. Well, that's fine because I haven't seen it, so I just But
halfway through Rebels at the moment, which is pretty good.
I think definitely Lee Van Cleef. I mean, he's got the same sort of facial setup. Yeah.
Proportions.
Yeah. For the listener, Lee just did an impression of Lee Van Cleef. So Obi-Wan's set in a different time, isn't it? Obi-Wan's set. Between the whatever it was called,
Revenge of the Sith,
and the Star Wars movie.
Star Wars Episode 4.
Episode 4. So this is a different time. So Obi-Wan's not going to encounter the Mandalorian, but he could encounter Boba Fett, although I suspect he wouldn't. And he could encounter Jabba the Hutt. So the Jabbas could be back. But are we expecting that to be pretty much Tatooine based as well?
I'm expecting him to go off world.
I'm hoping
partially based, but for the reasons that you say, but also that I've heard rumours of a particular showdown, which I'm thinking, well, it can't happen on Tatooine, otherwise the hordes of the Empire would be on Tatooine trying to find him. So
would this showdown be something that was in the movie Solo, and maybe a resolution to that revelation?
No.
Oh, really?
No.
So that revelation has just gone nowhere, or it's just linked Solo up.
And of course, Hayden Christensen's coming back.
Of course, yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you make your own connections in your head. So.
So it must go a bit sort of, because I like the Empire. I like that. Well, I like it when they go to like a Star Destroyer and run around the corridors shooting people. I like that kind of, that kind of look, that kind of feel.
Because but when you used to buy those bubblegum cards and get the blue cards, the Star Wars cards, Simon, weren't the ones on the Death Star the most boring ones? Because it's all just like black and white and really, monochrome colours. Whereas the ones on Tatooine were really sexy. They looked really good, didn't they?
Yeah, but did you really watch the first film and think, I wish there was more set on Tatooine? Or did you not feel when the Millennium Falcon took off that it was?
Did you know that there is something
is fine.
Something very evocative and rooting about the Tatooine scenes, though, because if I remember the Phantom Menace, the moment they went back to Tatooine, that was it. It was Star Wars again. Star Wars was Tatooine.
Yeah.
And those original scenes of R2-D2 and C-3PO in the desert, will live with me to the day I die, as being that is the scene that makes me feel like Star Wars. So yeah. But I know what you're saying. You know, it feels like there's only so far. I thought it was interesting when they were talking about some of the past of. They mentioned that Tatooine used to be a water planet or something like that, don't they? At one stage, where, you know, it's called the Dune Sea, and it was literally a sea at some point. I mean, so I thought that was fascinating.
It's kind of dented a little bit by this series by being released so close to Denis Villeneuve's Dune, which has whole sections about how this desert planet used to be a watery planet, but it got mined out and the dune seas, and it's got big sea snakes and stuff. So I mean, that's not. There's nothing new that Tatooine was based on Dune, but it's a little bit exposing to have the two side by side. But I thought it looked good. I mean, I still think the volume, the piece of technology they're using, which is this kind of big CGI toroid around them. I think in general, because I think they made it a bigger one now, you can't tell when it's being used and when it's not being used.
It's genius, isn't it? Really?
I think it's slightly better in this than it was in The Mandalorian, when it felt like there were lots of scenes set around a campfire or set around something in the middle, because at some point, this is what I'm interested in, this technology, is it's going to limit movement. It's going to limit what you show. So it increases the scope of backgrounds that you can have. But in the end, it's a bit like being in Lime Grove or in a BBC studio, that you'll have sort of scenes set in one place, and you'll kind of end up possibly losing that kind of depth of being on location. But I didn't get that feeling from The Mandalorian, so maybe the illusion is much more successful.
Yeah, it's only ever going to get better, though, isn't it? It's never going to get worse. So you'll just, you know, like early CGI. If you've ever seen the film Spawn, and then you look at the CGI that we've got now, it's only ever going to get better. It's not going to go backwards. So no matter, you won't be able to tell soon.
It's going to be used everywhere as well. I mean, if Bad Wolf Studios aren't building or aren't thinking of building a volume somewhere in Cardiff, because presumably once it's been built, that saves them like thousands of pounds.
No, pounds. It saves them pounds from going. They won't need to go to Barry Island or whatever it's called.
No, yeah, they won't need to go to South Africa or Norway, which is kind of a shame. But this is going to change the way television's made, because television, I think film will still go out on location, but television, you can, it will revolutionize it. So that's exciting as well.
Also, I think it's as far as the actor's concerned, I think there's going to be a psychological leap for them as well. Less acting to green screen and immersing themselves in it, for the same reason that when you watch the Lord of the Rings films, if you like those and you watch the extras and you see the amount of detail that's in those sets, which a lot of that detail never appears on screen, but it does allow the production to become immersed.
But then you look. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say it's the believability factor, isn't it?
But then you watch The Hobbit, and you watch the moment in The Hobbit behind the scenes where Ian McKellen breaks down, because The Hobbit is much more green screen without any practical elements, and he just struggles. Well, he's a great actor, but even he struggles to act with this kind of completely blank background, so he completely loses it.
That's because I think he had to try and talk to some of the characters, and they weren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the early films, you've got a lot more on set, where the height difference is cleverly kind of done in a particular way.
Yeah.
Which I can't really explain on audio or visual, it seems.
So Book of Boba Fett 2, can't remember if we score these?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Lee, what's your score for the Book of Boba Fett?
Wait, we haven't mentioned the Wookiee. He was great.
Okay. Oh, the Wookiee was great.
And the Rancor monster at the end was just unbelievably fun. I've never had so much fun watching anything in ages. Yeah, as soon as he did King Kong, I was like, what? Come on. But actually, I was laughing and I was enjoying myself. I thought, this is great fun. This is really fun.
I did enjoy the final episode. I don't think it was a perfect series, and I don't think the final episode kind of absolved the rest of the series or but it kind of did improve bits of it. So yeah.
Well, it would have been a 6 out of 10, but because of that end part and because of the Luke stuff, I'm going to knock it up to a 7.
Simon, thoughts on the last episode and score?
The last episode, yeah, as I say, that was Robert Rodriguez again, wasn't it? And compared to the previous one with the 20-mile-an-hour moped chase, it felt like a different show. Yeah, and I absolutely love the fact that he did a King Kong at the end, and it was great, and it seemed to go on. It went on, and I was trying to watch it before I went to work. Suddenly realised there's an extra 20 minutes to watch, and I had to come back after I'd been to work to watch the rest of it. So there's so much of it. It's
just resign. It's fine. They'll understand.
But I have to say the series as a whole, I would probably give a 7 out of 10. But the Bryce Dallas Howard episode, the Mandalorian episode, was a thing of beauty, and I give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
And I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 in general. I actually quite liked the Boba Fett actor. I thought he had that kind of, I think he did have charisma, and I think it was a different sort of performance to bring into these things. I wasn't a fan of the second Mandalorian season that much. But I'm still going to watch. So Obi-Wan, I will still maintain. I'm not sure about the ones about characters that I don't know. But Obi-Wan, I think the interest of seeing how they bring Hayden, as you say, Hayden Christensen back is just too interesting to miss. But yeah, Book of Boba Fett, I'm going to give a 7 to. So that was, unless there's any more final comments. No,
I don't think so.
Oh, yes. Did everyone like the theme tune that it actually went Boba 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 Fett?
Oh, I never noticed that.
Yeah, they're literally chanting Boba Fett.
Oh, wow. I'm an idiot. I'm going to go and listen to that now. No,
so,
I love all of the music through everything that's been happening with these westerns in space. They're really good.
They're really well, and I like the artwork at the end. They're really well sort of
gorgeous.
They've got a good kind of what is it? It's like a branding to it.
And I love the fact they brought back a Naboo starfighter. He's now flying a Naboo starfighter.
Cramped though, isn't it? When he gets out, you can see he's struggling.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to be talking about something completely different, and it probably won't feature any of you guys. I've lost track. JR's got the schedule, and all of these are put out randomly anyway. But until then, I was Matt.
I was Lee.
And I was Simon.
And we will speak again soon.
Ta-ra.
Okay. Shall I count down to stop recording?